So while we had a 0-day camp near Doc Campbell's store, myself, Pirate, Mr. Fabulous, and a couple of other hikers, Nature and Solo, decided that we would check out the Gila Cliff Dwellings, where Native Americans lived back in the 13th and 14th centuries. Right, that's enough of that. Time to get back to the trail. Okay, so we are now underway again, and we are currently a group of 5, with myself, Pirate, Mr. Fabulous, Dr. Faust, and Nature. So we found some hot springs. That's why we're hanging around in the water here. Our feet were already actually wet, so it's not quite as crazy as it looks. So we're now some way through the Gila alternate. Before we started walking through here, I would have laid good odds on this stretch being a section where we would see some more interesting wildlife encounters than we have. And although there's certainly been signs, the beaver dam, we could hear elks during the night when we first got here. Stories people have told us of seeing some of the Mexican wolves that have been reintroduced into the area. But so far, although it's been beautiful and we've seen a lot of little interesting animals, insects, birds, lizards, nothing too big just yet. But you never know. We shall keep looking. This is the 100th river crossing of the Gila. Mr. Fabulous taking it in his stride. Mr. Fabulous is a bit upset with me at the moment because someone beat him to giving me a trail name. But I'll tell you all about that later. So this is where we camped last night. Quite a nice spot. We didn't get a campfire going because it's a little bit too dry for that. Smokey the bear would have been unhappy with us. But it's a nice little place to wake up to. Okay, so we've been following the Gila through this canyon for about 60 miles now, gradually making our way upstream. And the further upstream we get, on average, the narrower the canyon has been getting, which means we have to cross the river more frequently. We are actually approaching 200 crossings now, although I'd be lying if I said I knew the exact one. Once Mr. Fabulous catches up, he'll be able to tell us because he's been keeping a pretty good count. Okay, so now that we're alone, I suppose I'd better tell you about my trail name. So you may remember that back in the first video, after leaving the Crazy Cook Monument down at the Mexican border, Jeremy was given his trail name by a pair of gentlemen named Checker and Stubby. Jeremy's trail name is Pirate, which I'm trying to get used to calling him. Ahoy there, matey! Now, to those of you who don't do a lot of this sort of hiking, the trail name probably seems a bit of a strange thing. But in addition to being a little bit of a laugh, it also makes it a bit easier to remember the names of people who you meet on trail. It's a lot easier to recall names like Radar or Endgame, Rocky, Mr. Fabulous than it is to remember Phil, Steve, Derek. And so it's partly for that reason that it's done. Anyhow, I mentioned Mr. Fabulous. He had taken it upon himself to give me a trail name, but he was very upset that somebody beat him to it. I'm sure he'll forgive me at some point. Excuse me while I cross this water. Okay, so my own trail name was given to me by a lady called Dysfunctiono. Yeah, that trail name is an exception to the rule that trail names are easier to remember than real names, because I keep on struggling to remember that one. Most people just call her DF. Anyhow, she's been permanently removed from Mr. Fabulous's Christmas card list for beating him to giving me a name. But it is a name that I think I can have some fun with, so I have accepted it. So from now on, I shall not be reporting to you from the trail as Dan, but as my trail name, Buck Wild. Now, Buck Wild doesn't normally tell his backstory because it's pretty dull, and it's better if he doesn't. But basically, Buck Wild is pretty much the opposite of my perceived personality. And I figure, yeah, that's pretty much spot on. Okay folks, well, I've managed to put this off for long enough. I've managed to go a few videos without going too deeply in depth, but I'm afraid it's time to talk about duty. As you know, out here on the trail, if you need to make poo-poo, then you have to dig a cat hole. And before you can do that, you need to find a good spot to go. Now, it's not a process anyone really looks forward to, so you tend to put it off for a while. So, a good while ago now, I dropped behind the others with the intention of finding somewhere suitable. Suitable meaning reasonably well hidden, somewhere that you can dig a deep enough hole in the ground, somewhere that you can have some cover, have some decency if someone else walks by. Well, I got to the point where it needed to be done. So I put down my pack, decided to scout out the area, and bearing in mind that outside of the group of people that I've been hiking with, hadn't seen another hiker for hours. As soon as I put down my pack and took out the toilet roll, the little shovel, or trowel rather, and the little plastic bag so that I could carry out any paper waste in, as soon as I'd taken those things out of my bag, I turned around and there were 4 new hikers, 2 coming from each direction, all fairly close. I couldn't believe it. So I quickly put them back in my bag, because no one really wants anyone else to know when they're about to do that. Stood around next to my bag sheepishly while they all passed. 2 of the hikers were coming from the direction in which I was headed, and they appeared a little bit lost. Now bear in mind, we are in a canyon, and there's only so many ways to go. At this particular junction, there was the way they'd come from, the way they were going, which is the way that I had come from, and there was a little offshoot to the side with a little stream which didn't really go anywhere. And they couldn't quite figure out which way to go, so I asked them if they were having some trouble. They said they wanted to get to the Gila Visitor Centre, which was quite a few miles in the direction I'd come from. So I pointed them in the right direction, and they didn't seem convinced. "You sure?" they said. I said, "Yep, that's the way I came." So they set off, not in the direction that I pointed them, but some other direction. And then they stopped, and then they came back, and then they tried a second direction. And then they did it a third time. They came back and they went back the original way. By this point, I'd been stood there for so long that the urgency had passed somewhat, and I decided to push forward in search of a better location. And the next 45 minutes or so drifted by. Again, I didn't see anyone, and again the need returned. So this time I had to climb up a little hill and go behind a tree. It gave me a view up and down the river, so I could see who was coming in each direction, but the view of my immediate vicinity wasn't that great. Nonetheless, I couldn't see anyone, so I dug my hole, I dropped my shorts, and I began. And as soon as I began, a hiker appeared out of nowhere, out of a puff of smoke. And he saw me, obviously. I don't think he saw my face, but he did see my butt and what was and what was going on there, so that's a lovely treat for him. I kind of took a deep breath, wished I hadn't because it's not a good time to do that. Anyhow, I carried on. A minute later, another hiker appears at the bottom of that hill, and he calls up to me. "Hey Bush, is that you?" I figure that Bush was the name of the hiker who went before. And I said, no, it's not. And then he proceeded to have a conversation with me. "Oh, hi, how's your day going?" And, if I'm honest, not all that great at the moment. Yeah, it's not a good time, folks, to have a conversation with someone. Nonetheless, that's kind of what happened. And then before I was finished, a third hiker actually appeared as well, so that was absolutely wonderful. I can't say it's the lowest point of my trip yet. That occurred in the boot heel, and if I've not mentioned it already, I'm not mentioning it at all. But, yeah. I didn't expect that story would take quite so long to tell. Apologies for that, folks. Wow, 6 minutes. Okay, I won't force you to relive anything like that again, probably. Buck wild on the trail for you folks. I'm looking forward to putting this back on. Hey guys, so we're just coming up now on Snow Lake, which we are told is our best chance of seeing interesting wildlife along the whole of the Gila River. We shall see. Some interesting wildlife up ahead. So we've got the tail end of a wildfire going on in the next 2 miles. going to be a bit smoky. We've been asked by a government official not to stop. So Pirate has stopped. Okay, so it's another morning on trail. Yesterday we left Dr. Fausto and Mr. Fabulous behind. Mr. Fabulous had some people that he needed to meet up with, and Dr. Fausto said he'd wait with him. Hopefully we'll see them somewhere down the line, because they're both a lot of fun to have around. Meanwhile, there still remains, obviously, myself and Pirate. And we still have Nature and a new addition to the group, Buffalo Chicken. So the three of those are a little way ahead. Yesterday was a little bit disappointing. We had thought at the start of the day that there was about 64 miles to go until we got to Pie Town. It's our next opportunity for resupply, showers, decent meal, laundry. But because we were on the Gila River alternate still, even though we've left the Gila River behind us now, we found that far out isn't all that great at calculating distances when you're using alternates. And it turns out there was actually an additional 33 miles on top of those 64, which means we will struggle to get there with the supplies that we have. So in about 30 miles time we're going to have the opportunity to hitch into a town called Reserve, where we'll hopefully be able to do a resupply and maybe even have a motel bed for the night. Also, just to add to the fun, this section that we're in now, the water sources are few and far between, so we're having to stretch out our water carries as much as we can, and some of that water is not all that great tasting anyway. But hey, all part of life on the trail. You've got to embrace the bad with the good. I'll catch you later. I have to admit, I'm having a really hard time catching up with the others today. I'm probably at least a mile or two behind by now. But, I'm having some issues with my shoulder, plus my energy just feels gone at the moment. But we'll get there. We'll get there. One of the worst things about New Mexico road walking is all the dust that comes up. See? Told you I'd find them. Well, We just wandered about 1.5 miles in the wrong direction, downhill. So now we're going back uphill that same 1.5 miles. So that's an extra 3 miles of carrying our heavy packs in the sun that we could have done without. So we're back again on the main route where we're supposed to be, but that little detour did cost us quite a bit of time. Looks as though if we do get into reserve tomorrow, it's not going to be until much later in the day than we hoped. Also, a government official warned us that there is a wildfire between here and there, but they hope to have it under control by the time we reach that section. If not, we'll have to bushwhack around it, and that could cost us even more time. Okay, so what you're seeing now is some, well, pretty much nothing, but this was filmed in my tent one night when myself, Barbecue Chicken, Pirate and Nature were camped out a little way north of Snow Lake, and there was a wolf pretty close by. We actually found its prints about 25-30 meters away from where we were camped the next morning. And it was howling by itself, and I kid you not, it was really, really loud. But when I played this recording back the next day, you could barely hear it. So I just figured I might as well tell you that the wolf was howling there, rather than watching this video of a black screen for 2 minutes, wondering what on earth's going on. And I'll give you an idea of pretty much what the wolf was communicating to us, because I happen to speak wolf, as most people do. So it was pretty much like this. Oh, hey, look, there's some easy meat in those tents. I'll go and have a look and have myself a nice easy meal. Oh, no, on second thoughts, the socks that are hanging up on that first tent absolutely stink. Someone else can have them. And that's more or less it. But yeah, it did go on for quite a while. As do I sometimes. In all honesty though, it was pretty cool to hear it. Hey guys, so it's a new morning on trail. Just filled up from this delightful water source, which has clogged our filters a great deal. Always a pleasure. We still don't know what's happening with regard to this fire that's between us and Highway 12, where we're hoping to grab a ride into reserve for a resupply and a night off the trail. A number of hikers have been walking back in the opposite direction, and we'd much rather not retrace our steps, especially after having to do that so much yesterday. I think, well, what we are going to do is push on, because none of the hikers had first-hand information. There's a couple of routes that we can take a little bit closer to where we think the fire is, which would mean that we don't have to double back on ourselves, but we really won't know until we get there. There hasn't been much wind last night, so my guess is that the firefighting conditions should be reasonably favourable. We can't see any smoke in the air or smell any smoke, so I'm hoping that things will be okay. Check in with you soon. So I have to admit, I'm having a real hard time of it today. The others in our little group at the moment are a little way ahead. They I'm embarrassed to say they keep having to wait for me quite some time. For some reason today I just feel like I've got nothing left in the tank. My heart is racing, even when we're just walking along relatively level ground. So uphills are killing me. Don't know if it's the elevation, we have been higher so far. Don't know if it's that I've not been eating enough, not been drinking enough. My money's on the fact that even after a few hundred miles on trail, I'm still not very fit. We'll get there. I think we're now in the area where the wildfire that we were warned about was going on. We can see some flame retardant on the ground and on the trees there in the background, but I'm not seeing any signs of an active fire, so hopefully that's been dealt with. So fortunately we made it to a point where we were able to grab a hitch from a nice couple who had an RV to hand, and they took us into the town of Reserve. Okay, so we've arrived in Reserve, but there's no accommodation available at the moment, it seems. A lot of the spaces that would have been there have been taken up by the firefighters who have been working hard in the area. So we're going to see if we can get some food and then figure things out. That hitch took us 20 miles off trail. Probably a bit tricky to get back, but we did need to come because the water was getting very low. Okay, so we're here in Reserve. Just had a meal, but we were not able to find lodging anywhere that had an actual proper bed this evening. So I'm just seeing if I can find an ATM so that I can get a couple of sodas out of those drinks machines over the road, because everything is now closed. Ah, there's the ATM over there, that's good. And then we have to walk half a mile out of town with our packs and pay $15 for the privilege of sleeping in our tents again tonight, which is a bit disappointing. Oh well, tomorrow's another day. Jake's General Merchandise for all your meats, produce, feeds, chainsaws and lottery needs. They really sell everything in the shops in these small towns. Hello. Okay, so I'm in the tent again, and I promised that I would open up this card today, which is my birthday, So this card is from my nan, and I promised that I would bring it with me and open it on trail. And I'm absolutely amazed it's in as good a condition as it is. In case you're wondering if my hand is tanned or dirty there, it is unmistakably dirt, but hopefully there is a shower in the near future in store for me. Good luck. Happy birthday, wishing you the very best, Daniel. Please keep in touch, from Nanny Dot. Thank you, Nanny Dot. Love you, and I hope you're well.